Roots 101 Deeply Rooted. From the vibrant and storied heart of America, brought to you by the Roots 101 African American Museum. This is the Deeply Rooted Podcast, where we pay homage to the unsung heroes, the pillars of our community, the inventors, the artists, the activists, and our ancestors by highlighting Black excellence of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Your guide on this journey, none other than the passionate and insightful Lamont Collins, a visionary, a mentor, a scholar, and most importantly, a griot of African American history and culture. So sit back, tune in, and let's dive deep into the rich soil as we get deeply rooted.
Hey everybody, Lamont Collins, Deeply Rooted, Louisville, Kentucky, Roots 101 African American Museum. Our podcast is back. And one of my first guests is a young king that I love to listen to. Listened to him for years. And now I've gotten to know him much better than I knew him before. I thought I knew him just by talking to him, but now talking to him personally takes it to a whole different level. Let me introduce you to the king here in Louisville, the king today, I think the king every day, Dr. Ricky Jones. Go ahead, Ricky, tell them who you are.
Look, thank you, Baba. That's a heck of an introduction. You know, as people who know us now, I call you Baba, father figure, but more, and you call me Young King. So I appreciate you for making me feel like I'm still young, man. But Ricky L. Jones, PhD. So I only make people who I dislike, and my students call me doctor. But I'm the Baldwin King Scholar in Residence at the Christina Lee Brown Envirome Institute, and professor of Pan-African Studies and past chair of the Department of Pan-African Studies at the University of Louisville. So that's my professional stuff, social stuff. Father of Jordan Jones, you know, got a brand new 16-year-old daughter, you know, just hit that. And, you know, everything I do is for her and for children who look like her, of course. And, you know, happy to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you because I think you're such a figure in the community, and I'm glad because we're gonna ask some serious questions.
Okay.
Because I think you're a serious person, and but I think you are in depth enough to talk about whatever needs to be talked about. And I think one thing that I love about you, let's talk about University of Louisville from the academic standpoint. How did you get to University of Louisville, and what is your background academically and as a person?
Okay. I went to Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island, then on to the U.S. Naval Academy my first 2 years of college. Did my last 2 years of undergraduate school at Morehouse College. You know, so I tell people, look, I went to the same schools as Jimmy Carter and John McCain and Julian Bond, Maynard Jackson, and Martin Luther King Jr. So it was a great undergraduate mix. My senior year at Morehouse, I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and I got recruited to the University of Kentucky by a brother named Pete Middleton. Turned out to be one of my fraternity brothers. And I got
What fraternity is that?
Kappa Alpha Psi.
Okay.
And I had a nice fellowship,
Okay.
the Lyman T. Johnson Fellowship. I'm a poor kid from the housing projects of Atlanta, man, so I didn't have any money to go to school, so I was dependent on my grades, my smarts, my track record to get me through. And so Kentucky, it wasn't that I was in love with Kentucky. I'd never been to the state of Kentucky, let alone the University of Kentucky, but they gave me a great fellowship, which enabled me to, you know, go to school for free and get a little bit of money to live on. And so from there, and it's important to know, I was a Lyman T. Johnson Fellow. What I didn't know at the time, because I'd never heard of Lyman T. Johnson. So we're in the 75th anniversary of Lyman T. Johnson integrating the University of Kentucky. I did not know that Lyman T. Johnson's grandson, Emar Hutchins, was my classmate at Morehouse.
Wow.
So, you know, it was kind of kismet that brought me to the area. But when I got ready to leave UK, I got recruited to the University of Louisville by a brother who's passed on now, Dr. Robert Douglas, who became like a father figure, mentor, and colleague. And you know, I've been here ever since.
Well, talk, you know what, let's talk about, I mean, Ricky Jones, Louisville area, people in Louisville know you. But from a national level, you're a writer,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
You write for the Courier Journal?
Yeah.
Can you explain that, what you do with them?
What I do is I kind of follow a W.E.B. Du Bois model with my approach to being a scholar. I don't believe in just this closed ivory tower or ebony tower academic interaction like some people do. So early in my career, I had to write scholarly articles to get them published in certain places. I had to write books to get tenure, all of that stuff. So I'm capable of doing it. But what was also very important to me was I wasn't trying to do any of that stuff, just for this self-aggrandizement or ego. I've always seen myself as a tribune to Black people. Like, my PhD is in political science, but I knew that if I went to teach at a white school, I would teach in a Black studies department, not a political science department. If I went back to an HBCU, I would teach in a political science department or a Black studies department. Mm-hmm. Because everything that I do is in service to Black people. Why? Because there's so few of us that have had the opportunity, largely because of the sacrifices of our ancestors and the support of community members that we come from, that never get into these schools, never get these degrees. They supporting us, they loving us. So my thought is we serve them. Mm-hmm. They ain't reading these, scholarly journals, but they'll pick up a newspaper. A lot of people in America, they're not, reading some 200-300 page book, but they might read a 500-600 page article. Mm-hmm. My column that I write for the Courier Journal, USA Today Network, and is published in a lot of different affiliated papers across the country. My thought is, one, it moves fast. People can get access to it quickly. If I write a column today, it could literally get published this afternoon or tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I can speak to the issues that are facing Black people quite often that nobody else is speaking to.
Right.
So, Du Bois did that in the crisis. So I always have like a public platform to write.
But you talk about Du Bois, and we talk about Du Bois, we talk about Baldwin. We can talk about a lot of brothers that were activists in that day and time, right? And all of them left America to live somewhere else, right? Yeah. So are you leaving America or are you staying in America? Tell me where you are with that. How historically, how even those that they thought the most academic levels still was fed up enough to America to leave America. Are you ever that fed up?
Eventually, I am leaving America and going to the country of Atlanta.
Well, a lot of people think that is a different country, right?
Well, Atlanta's home, but I've explored it. Okay. I know that eventually I will not be in a place that is not predominantly Black.
Okay.
Atlanta's home, so that's certainly on my list. But if I'm not in Atlanta, I'm certainly exploring leaving the country eventually, to kind of live out my life. And there are more and more Black people who are doing that. More and more Black people who are either making a move to the few predominantly Black cities that we have in the country where Black people have some semblance of political power and social comfort, or they're becoming expatriates. Right. Baldwin went back and forth. Du Bois in 61 said, wrote a note to a friend of his and said he was leaving. He said, Negroes in America cannot win. Mm-hmm. And even the ones who didn't leave, people don't talk about, Martin Luther King, who basically lost faith in the integration project and became more and more nationalistic towards the end. Mm-hmm. So these are things we have to consider as our people are continuously persecuted.
Yeah, because when I listen to you and your compassion to what you're saying, then I go back and, like I said, at Baldwin, and then I talk about Du Bois, right? And when I was in school, it was always Du Bois, Booker T. Yeah. There's two different philosophies on how America would rock, very different. And I don't know which side I was on. I know I didn't like Booker T from a perspective of service for Black people. That didn't rock with me at all. But when I listened to Bois sometime, he took at least I feel, he took the capitalistic approach of white America, saying the most educated is what rules from a capitalistic system, right? So do you ever wrestle with Du Bois isolating the most intelligent from the less intelligent, or you think it was a move in the day of time they had to do that? You follow what I'm asking?
Yeah. I always read Du Bois different.
Okay.
I didn't see, first of all, with Booker T. Washington was incredibly problematic because he's the first Black leader we see in 1895 who gets elevated to the forefront by white people.
Correct.
And so I'm always suspicious of Black leaders whites who are in control and may not have the best interests of Black people in mind. Say, this is the Black person you should listen to.
Right.
So you should listen to Candace Owens. You should listen to
Killer Mike.
Yeah, Killer Mike is a we could do a whole podcast on Killer Mike. but the Clarence Thomases of the world, you know, the Shelby Steeles of the world, people like that. But I read Du Bois a little bit different. Du Bois, and certainly offering critiques, right? He was definitely an elitist. There's no way around that. If you are saying that Du Bois was not an elitist, then you're just not being honest.
Correct.
But his idea of the talented tenth, I didn't read him as saying that these people should abandon the black masses or segregate themselves from the black masses. I read Du Bois as feeling like these are the people who are best prepared to lead and fight on behalf of the majority of black people. But he was disappointed in them, you know, because even in his time, Du Bois said a good percentage of black people who went on to get those degrees, they used them for selfish purposes.
Exactly.
They weren't committed to any type of collective, you know, movement. And so he reduced it. He was like, it might be more of a 100th than a 10th. And he talked about the guiding 100th. So Du Bois had his flaws, but I do think he was committed to the masses, as am I. But I do believe that some of us who have been trained in certain areas, I mean, I spent all the way up to, you know, first 28 years of my life moving me towards getting a PhD in political science. So I think I know a little bit more about politics than people who don't pay attention to it. But the key is this, that I'm committed to those people, to listening to them, to learning from them. Meanwhile, they're learning from me, and we have, you know, an organic exchange. But our goal is to make things better for black people, not just, you know, bathing in some bourgeois stuff where we're more and more like oppressive forces.
I mean, that's a question I want to ask. I'm trying to know you, but try to know the leader that you are, right? Because I think even when I say Du Bois and I think about Booker T and all the intellectuals that we come up historically about and we identify with, how much of the identification do we take from them to define who we are, right? So if we talk about Du Bois in the sense that we know it was from the intellectual part, right? We know it was from a society part. You're a fraternity member, right? I think he was a fraternity member also.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So even in our community, people even think differently of fraternities and sororities, right? So I guess the question I'm asking you, if everything you are there different parts of you that conflict to who you are, or you think all those different parts make who you are?
Both. All the different parts make who I am, because I have very intentionally borrowed from all of these men and women that I admire. You know, I borrow from Ida B. Wells. I borrow from Harriet Tubman's bravery. I borrow from Du Bois. I borrow from A. Philip Randolph. You know, I borrow from Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm. Certainly borrow from King. If I had to choose one person I think I'm most like personality-wise, it probably would be Malcolm. You know, but I borrow from all of them. You know, borrow from Baldwin. I mean, I named the scholar in residence position that I'm in. James Baldwin, Martin Luther King Jr. scholar in residence. I mean, I went to Morehouse, so did King. Baldwin's one of my favorite writers because he was so incredibly fierce.
He was. But here's my thing with Baldwin, is that one of the most intelligent brothers of all, when you listen to things he said. But my passion for Baldwin is that the brother died as frustrated as he lived. I never saw Baldwin ever chill down and go, I'm here, I've made it, whatever. And it seemed like to me, he's like I had grandparents that had made a living of making money, right? But they didn't enjoy the money. You know, they didn't take the trips. They still had this thing in the back of their mind, well, I go to Alabama, I go to my cousins and them, but I'm not going to fly to Paris, right? I don't want. So to me, Baldwin, Baldwin in a sense, to me, he allowed the prejudice and the racism that he saw in America still hold him to his grave.
If you love black people, as Baldwin did, as you do, you know, Baldwin said, to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost every day. So if you love black people, how can you not be troubled? Like daily, you know, daily. I am troubled.
And I'm troubled. So
daily.
I know what you're saying, right?
And all of us are.
Yeah.
The thing that all of these men and women had in common, who we revere so much, as we listen to, like one thing that sticks in my craw is when you hear black people today, so-called black leaders say, well, you got to do things the right way, or I'm working behind the scenes, the right way. What that translates into for me is that you have given into, if you're working on behalf of your people at all, and many of them aren't really working on behalf of their people at all, but if you're working on behalf of your people at all, you've given into doing so within the parameters of prescribed to you by oppressive forces. White supremacy and no other dominative system is going to fold if you function by the rules that it sets. So when you say doing things the right way, you're saying you're doing things the way that the white folks have told you should do things. I don't fight like everybody else.
Okay.
I don't fight like that. But I'm being troubled. Look, my belief is if you're connected to black people, and I was telling the university administrator this recently. I'm like, if you're connected to black people in the way that I am, the first thing that you realize, black people ain't dumb, okay? My grandmother raised me. My mother got pregnant at 15 years old. So you run into a lot of black folk in the academy, or white folks too, they'll study black people, but they're not connected to black people in that way. They ain't lived what they study. They'll connect. They'll study the impact of drug abuse. My mother struggles with drugs right now. I'm talking crack, not weed, right? My uncle on crack, been to prison because of many of these things. Grew up in that environment. You talk about teenage pregnancy. My mother had me when she was 15 years old. My grandmother raised me. My grandmother, who grew up in rural Georgia, never went to school. She couldn't read. So I know about all of these things, but I knew how smart my grandmother was. Could not read, but smart as a whip, incredibly wise. So if you're connected to black people, you understand they may not be as formally educated as you, but they're very intelligent and they know what's going on around them, even if they can't necessarily put words to it, okay? So you learn from them and you help them. Now, but here's what you also know, if you believe in something. My belief is this. I care about black folks so much that if there are some things that they don't understand structurally or systematically that's going on, or institutionally that's going on, I care about them too much to let them be fooled about something that they don't understand.
I love that. Let me interject a question to you. I remember when we did the event here, the King Project.
Oh, so great, man. Thank you for hosting us.
Well, it was a great event. But you said something, because it was time and space with me, right? You said something about the election, and you talked about the Democratic Party. You talked about connections. Now, we know what we see going on today, and we see the intentionals of a party telling us what they're going to do if they get in power. They're not hiding. They're saying what they're going to do. You're talking about, and I think what you're saying, and you can say for yourself, you're just saying our vote, our allegiance just shouldn't be to one party every year. But in this time and space, so much of potential of what we will lose, because we don't have enough brothers and sisters understanding everything that's out there to lose, that we say, okay, we'll stay at home because Democratic Party ain't doing everything they need to do. Not that I'm endorsing Democratic Party. I'm trying to piggyback on the conversation. And I thought when you said that, now that room was an intelligent room, but what I see people like Killer Mike, people talk about the voting process. And to me, I'm hearing stay at home. The risk, if I love black people like you love black people, I would never tell black people stay at home. Now, should we work on the process to get more power in the process? How do we do that? Yes, but should we allow someone to come in and already said what they're going to do to destroy us? Get in it like the Malcolm used to talk about the chicken in the hen house. So in your words of what you were saying, and I'm trying to put words in it because I don't want to do that, explain to me what you were talking about with the Democratic Party. I think you were saying we can't give our vote away, correct? But you do think there is a present danger in this country right now politically, or no?
Well, there always has been.
Yes.
Right? There always has been. You said a lot. Let me try to get to it. First of all, thank you for hosting the Baldwin King Project. We did a memorial lecture on the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s death, and you hosted us, and it was a fabulous gathering of people for people that are checking out this podcast, just go to YouTube, pull up Baldwin King Project, and you can find the full video to that. It highlights Roots 101, that is a fabulous partner to us, and I appreciate you for that. Now, on party affiliation, because I want to be really, really clear, because I don't want people to misunderstand me.
Correct.
When you offer what I see as constructive and needed critique of the Democratic Party, where Black political, social, economic, psychological, educational interests are concerned, you're not endorsing the Republicans.
Correct.
You know, people tend to think of that in this bifurcated way. If you say, hey, the Democrats are falling short, and so then some interests that are more hostile to Black people being the Republican Party right now, because people say, oh, this is why you should be down with us. No. As I tell people, and OG told me years ago, you know, Black people have always been very strategic with our votes. We know right now, unless something changes, and this is funny to me, we know that the Democrats will kill us, but they'll wait till next week. The Republicans will get us tonight.
Right.
And so whenever we vote for a Democrat right now, we're just voting for 7 more days to plot. Now, here's where I'm different from a lot of people. I don't encourage people to stay at home randomly. But I would make the argument that for certain voting cycles, because Black people are the Democratic Party's most loyal constituency. Now, understand, historically, there was a time we were the Republican Party's most loyal constituency.
Until they threw us out.
And those parties switch places, right? You get into the mid-20th century, they start to switch places under FDR. And then finally, that switch is complete in 1960. And, you know, I encourage people to go read about that. But if Black people are the Democratic Party's most loyal constituency, then the Democratic Party should consistently pay attention to Black interests and Black suffering.
And I agree on that.
If they do not, how do we hold them accountable?
Okay.
So my thing, and it's a last-ditch thing, but if we say to the Democratic Party, local election, statewide election, even national election, okay, y'all want to ignore us? You want to take our vote for granted? We're not going to vote for the Republicans. We're not going to do that. We understand what they are. But we ain't going to vote for you either. We're going to sit this election cycle out to prove to you you cannot win without us. And that's going to teach you a lesson. So you come back around, you're going to behave better. That's a different strategy than just randomly not going out to vote.
Right. But,
you know,
but we collectively care about Black people. I'm just saying in this election, not knocking anything you're saying at this point, because we're saying the same thing. But the danger of this election, I agree, all elections have danger, so I won't say that either. But this particular time and space, how can we lay that out to people that's not going to be do diligently, couldn't get the word out, do their part on understanding who they should vote for? Should we be in a position to at least lay that out that, okay, this may not be the greatest alternative, but definitely a third-party candidate, let's like a Cornel West. Let's not knock West, but he's a tenured professor, right? Yeah. But even though he's a tenured professor, it seems like he always have a problem with the institution having tenure. So I don't know what that is to be so qualified as he is.
I'm the same way.
that he has a hard time getting tenure. Yeah. But when someone like that joins the race, and all of a sudden it becomes, and we got a history of it when I think it was Hillary Clinton. When did we have those third-party candidates? It went past that. It was back with
Ross Perot.
Clinton. Yeah, Ross Perot. So when we know the dangers of that, and I'm asking you as a historian and a professor and someone that's connected to the Black community, can it ever be a risk that we're trying to show that the reward will never come back?
First of all, I don't think we're ready to execute that strategy right now. Okay. Sitting out. I don't think we have enough Black people who are on the same page nationally or even here locally, right? To do that right now. There will have to be a build up to that.
So that's what I'm saying.
So you get some buy-in.
We agree. Yes.
All right. So what we're talking about is a theoretical political strategy in the first place. But to your second thing, here's where I'm different about American politics where Black people are concerned. And you touched on, all these elections are dangerous. All of them are dangerous. You know, Black people are the most hated people in this country. Correct. Bar none. Bar none. And there is no close second. I dare anybody to say there is a close second. So that puts us in a particular position where we always got to be vigilant. You know, we always got to be diligent in what we're doing. Always. Because that's where it goes. But I'm more hopeful in our ability to survive. As, these folk go, well, we can't let Trump in. Y'all already did it. You already let Trump in before. And we survived him. You know? We already survived George Wallace. We survived Strom Thurmond. We survived Calvin Coolidge in the White House. We survived slavery. We survived, Jim Crow. We survived all of that. So if you talk about people who have survived all of that, you think I'm really scared of Donald Trump?
Well,
that's not you,
yeah.
but to them. My thing is, my problem with these people, Bob, is this. The Republicans are too callous and the Democrats are too cowardly. And so the question for Black people on the local, state, and national level, how is it that we can steer, ideally, both of them in a direction that's going to be more humane for us and our children? And I don't give a doggone if they like me. I don't care if they embracing me. You think I care if the University of Louisville gives me some awards? They ain't gonna give me no award. Community people do. They ain't gonna give me no love. But the community people do, and that's who I'm serving, the community. And so we strategizing for the community and for our children. Because, somebody told me, well, you can't call Robert Stivers, who's up in the state Senate, a racist. If Robert Stivers is presiding over a state Senate that's going through all this anti-DEI stuff, and look, I don't care nothing about DEI. Be clear. DEI is just a label, which is the latest iteration of Black people trying to slot themselves into a movement to seek some equality. All this DEI stuff, I see DEI officers stand up all over the place and talk about DEI for half an hour and never mention Black folk. I'm not down with that. And we're talking about Black DEI officers, and they're broken.
With no power.
Yeah,
I
I don't care nothing about them. They're about their individual positions, not collective power. But anybody who says to me, well, you can't call Robert Stivers a racist, if he is presiding over a state Senate that is pushing all of these anti-diversity, which I see as anti-Black bills, right? Seeking anti-Black legislation, then he's a damn racist.
Well, let me ask you this.
Right?
Yeah,
and we can't be afraid to call him that.
Right.
And call him that to his face, him and the rest.
But here's what I'm asking you. We know, you're right, we've survived everything as Black people. But now we're surviving a Supreme Court that has been orchestrated to, like we know that race-wise that we're becoming less white people than Black people, Black and brown people. So we know from a population standpoint, the demographics of America is changing, right? But when I can put Supreme Court justice able to put laws in to keep them in power, that's a different animal that we've seen in the past, except for in the 1800s.
Yes and no, right? White supremacy always deals with a push-pull.
Okay.
As my colleague in Lexington, Derek White, likes to say, people think the progress is just linear. It's not. You move forward, they push you back, you fight forward again. This is why it's so important to understand history. The Supreme Court is the same body that in Dred Scott, right, said that a Black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect, right? 40 years later, they do Plessy versus Ferguson, this separate but equal thing. But then you get to 54 and you get Brown versus Board. And so you get positive things coming out of the Supreme Court. But then you got state Supreme Courts, like in my home state of Georgia. They adopt the Confederate flag immediately after Brown versus Board to show resistance. When you talk about demography, we understand that the demographic layout of America is changing, but white people understand it too. Why do you think they're fighting so fiercely right now? They're afraid, many of them, that the white supremacist infrastructure upon which this country was built is crumbling.
And that's why the Supreme Court's like it is now.
That's why it's like it is now. But luckily for us, they're not immortal.
But
those justices are not immortal.
They're not immortal.
So
but
everything can be turned around.
Yeah, if you have someone that's empowered to change it around.
Yeah.
And so if the Supreme Court is set, and then we don't go vote and those leaders are set, then what changes?
I understand what you said. I'm talking long term.
Okay.
I'm talking more long term.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I know, and I like to joke with people and say, look, it has not been proven that I'm not immortal because I'm still alive, but I know I'm not. This country may never be what I want it to be.
Right.
But I know that it will not be what I want it to be in my lifetime.
Yeah. I think we both can agree to that.
Right. And so I'm hoping that my daughter will see this thing balance off a little bit over time in this country. Because as we talk about becoming expatriates, for instance, Black people deserve to be here. We've put more blood, sweat, and tears into this soil than anybody.
Every war it was, even when we were free. I agree.
We have been the group. That has far outpaced every other group in this country to really live up to American ideals.
Well, we've been the patriots, and we also been the survivors.
Right.
We've been the greatest survivors in this country, coming over on ships and bottoms of ships and chains. But in spite of, we've survived, and I think it's the point you made earlier. So it is the history of us surviving.
Well, it's survival, and it's a sense of justice. When America said all men are created equal, Black folk believe that.
That's right.
When they said freedom, liberty, and justice for all, we believe that.
And we still do. That's why we keep pursuing it.
We've been fighting for that. I shudder to believe, as unjust and contradictory as this country is, I shudder to think what America would be if Black people had not been here. Black men and women had not been here. Not the Uncle Toms, right? Not the ones just concerned about their little positions, but the true fighters. What would this country be if we hadn't have been here to be the conscience of this country?
Well, I'll say the Frederick Douglasses.
Yes, we're still the conscience of this country. We are still the conscience of this country. And folks don't want to admit, well, you can't do things, but you're wrong.
Hey, everybody, Lamont Collins, founder and CEO of Roots 101 African American Museum in Louisville, Kentucky. You just watched part 1. Wait for part 2. It even gets better. Roots 101, legacies matter, and so do you.